As the war enters its 967th day, these are the main developments. Here's the situation on Saturday, October 19, 2024. South Korea has warned of a grave security threat, as its spy agency said 1,500 North Korean troops have arrived to fight with Russia in Ukraine. Ukrainian soldiers are locked in a bitter battle for the town of Toretsk in the eastern Donetsk region, which Russian troops entered last Friday. An official in the Ukrainian city of Pokrovsk, a key target in Russia's advance westwards, has urged residents to evacuate as essential services like heating will be cut. President Zelenskyy said that Ukraine's allies are pushing for the country to lower its military draft age from 25, but that he sees no reason to do so. Diplomacy. Kyiv has said Russia returned the bodies of 501 servicemen killed in fighting, while Russia and Ukraine each swapped 95 prisoners of war in an agreement mediated by the United Arab Emirates. Russian President Vladimir Putin has said a joint proposal tabled in May by China and Brazil for ending the war in Ukraine was balanced and could yield results. U.S. President Joe Biden has said there is no consensus on giving Ukraine long-range weapons to conduct deeper strikes into Russia, but called on NATO to sustain our support during a visit to Berlin. Before we move further, please like and subscribe to my channel for more in-depth analysis. Finances. The International Monetary Funds Board has completed a review of a fund arrangement for Ukraine that will enable the disbursement of $1.1 billion to Kyiv. The U.S. is willing to provide up to $20 billion to Ukraine as part of a G7 loan that will be repaid with profits generated by frozen Russian assets, 3 anonymous sources have told the Financial Times. Ukraine in maps. Tracking the war with Russia. Fighting has raged in Ukraine since Russia launched a full-scale invasion in February 2022. Russian forces have made small gains in recent months, but now Ukrainian forces have staged a counter-offensive into Russia. Here is a recap of recent significant events and the situation in Ukraine. Ukraine sends units into Russia. Ukrainian troops launched a surprise attack across the border in early August, advancing up to 18 miles, 30 kilometers, into the Russian region of Kursk. Almost 200,000 people were evacuated from areas along the border by the Russian government, and President Vladimir Putin condemned the Ukrainian offensive as a major provocation. After 2 weeks, Ukraine's top commander claimed to control more than 1,200 sq.km of Russian territory and 93 villages. The regions of Kursk and Belgorod have both declared a state of emergency. The counter-offensive is seen partly as an attempt to force Russia to redeploy units from the east and relieve pressure on the beleaguered Ukrainian defenses there, and partly as a bid to improve Ukraine's chances of a peace settlement. Russian incursion north of Kharkiv. At the beginning of May 2024, Russian forces crossed the international border to the north of Ukraine's second biggest city, Kharkiv. Several villages were seized and thousands of civilians fled. Russia's main offensive has long focused on the eastern Donetsk region, but this was one of the most significant ground assaults since the start of the war, and further stretched Ukraine's frontline defenses. The Russian push took place at the end of a 4-month period when the U.S. was not supplying weapons to Ukraine, due to a stalemate in the U.S. Congress. The issue was finally resolved at the end of April, when the U.S. passed a $61 billion aid package to provide missiles, artillery, and air defense systems to the Ukrainian military. Ukrainian forces eventually held firm, and even though the city of Kharkiv has come under repeated attack from glide bombs fired by Russian warplanes, it remains beyond the range of Russian artillery. Russia grinds forward in the east. The incursion north of Kharkiv was some distance from the main front line in the east, where Russia has continued its offensive operations and been edging forward since October 2023. Eastern Ukraine has been contested territory since 2014, when Russian-backed fighters seized large swaths of the eastern Donetsk and Luhansk regions. Russia's biggest advantage is manpower, and it has shown a willingness to throw soldiers at Ukrainian positions to gain a few meters at a time. About 1,200 Russian soldiers were being killed or wounded every day in May and June, the highest rate since the beginning of the war, according to Western officials. In recent days, Russian troops have made some significant gains to the northwest of Donetsk and claim to have captured the small town of New York. In response, Ukraine has ordered the evacuation of the city of Pokrovsk, with a local military official telling residents that Russian forces were rapidly approaching. The Russian advance towards Pokrovsk is the most notable change in control of the front line near Donetsk for several months. The last major change came when Ukraine withdrew its troops from Avdiivka, just north of Donetsk, back in February after months of fighting. Almost all of Avdiivka's pre-war population of more than 30,000 people have left, and the town itself is almost completely destroyed. To the north, areas around Bakhmut have remained a flashpoint and have endured some of the heaviest fighting of the war. Although Ukraine gained some ground around Chasiv Yar, which is situated on high ground some 10 kilometers west of Bakhmut, Russian forces have since made further advances in the area. 2.5 years of fighting. Russia's invasion began with dozens of missile strikes on cities all over Ukraine before dawn on the 24th of February 2022. Russian ground troops moved in quickly, and within a few weeks were in control of large areas of Ukraine and had advanced to the suburbs of Kiev. Russian forces were bombarding Kharkiv, and they had taken territory in the east and south as far as Kherson and surrounded the port city of Mariupol. But they hit very strong Ukrainian resistance almost everywhere, and faced serious logistical problems with poorly motivated Russian troops suffering shortages of food, water, and ammunition. Ukrainian forces were also quick to deploy Western-supplied arms, such as the NLAW anti-tank system, which proved highly effective against the Russian advance. By October 2022, the picture had changed dramatically, and having failed to take Kiev, Russia withdrew completely from the north. The following month, Ukrainian forces recaptured the southern city of Kherson. Since then, the battle has mostly been in the east of Ukraine, with Russian forces slowly gaining ground over many months while losing at least 50,000 troops and probably many more.